All right, so now we're going to be starting with the server part of the course. So we're going to talk about the server and what is a server and what is a client. I know this is basic stuff, but if you know this, of course, you can move forward. It's just going to take a second. So a server is going to be a computer that does things. Could be whatever service, right? So the server is going to accept tasks to do, and it's going to be awaiting until somebody or someone asks the server something to do. Now the thing that is going to be asking things in this case is going to be the actual client. We have it right here. So the client is going to do the asking. We know that. Now this asking, we call it request. This is what we call it. The server, whenever it receives a request, is going to execute a task. And then the server, of course, will send a response back with some data, with an error, or with whatever. So now they need to talk to each other in a language that they can understand. And this is going to sound familiar. And this is going to be called HTTP. So the HTTP is the language in, the common language they can understand. So they communicate through HTTP. Now, in the past, we had one little problem. Let me take this to a more real scenario. In the case of the client, it's going to be the browser, and of course the server is going to be just the server. Now in the past, to create a full web page, a developer had to know at least 2 languages. So the browser with HTML and then JavaScript, and then on the server side with PHP and Ruby, for example. So we had no choice at all. We needed to learn at least 2 languages. Now, since JavaScript grew popular and most of developers love JavaScript, Node.js came into play to change things. So now with Node.js, we can use JS for everything. We can use JS on the server. So now it's a big word. We're gonna be using isomorphic JavaScript. We're going to be using JavaScript for everything, for the client and the browser. And this is the big word, isomorphic JavaScript. So now what we're going to be doing on the next part, we're going to be learning how to create a web server with Node.js. First, we're going to do the most basic implementation of a server. It's going to be really, really simple. And then we're going to build a server with Express, of course, because it's the most popular way. So let's try to create a server just with Node. Okay, so finally we're gonna hit the code. So open your IDE, whatever IDE you use, and create a directory, just an empty directory. I'm gonna call my Node simple server, and then of course you need to navigate to that path. So first we need to create a file, and I'm gonna call it server.js, whatever, makes sense. We are gonna create a server. So now to create a server just with Node, no library, no dependency, no nothing, we need to require a built-in module from Node. So I'm going to say const and HTTP. Now the HTTP, of course, we need to require it, so it's going to be called HTTP. Now most of the times it's the same variable name with the module. So okay, how do we create a server? Now this HTTP module provides a method called createServer. So I'm going to say HTTP, and then dot, and then create server, just like that. This is a method. Now this create server will create a server object, and this method is going to take a callback. So this callback is going to be executed every time the server gets a request. Every time something happens, it's going to be running this callback. So this callback, this function, is going to be taking 2 different arguments. Now, the first one is going to be the request, and the second one it's going to be called response. And you're going to be hearing this word a lot. So this will create a server, all right? We'll start the server up, and it's going to be awaiting for something to happen. Now, whenever a user enters to our domain, our web page, this is going to be executed, and right here inside we're going to be returning to the screen whatever we want in this case. So whenever you want to send something, the first thing you need to set is going to be the headers, right? So again, the response, inside the response, we have something available that is going to be called write head. Now with write head, we can specify headers. In this case, first, this write head is going to take 2 different arguments. The first one is going to be the status code. You know that whenever you make a request, you get a status code. Whenever you get 200, it means that everything went fine. So we're going to pass 200 for now. We're going to do comma, and the second is going to be an object. And inside the object, we need to set headers. Now we're going to be just sending some plain text. You know, for one example, when you write a head, the header is going to say the content is going to specify the content of that you're going to be receiving inside the browser. Could be HTML, could be text, could be JSON, could be whatever. In this case, we're just going to send some plain text. So we're going to need to set the content type. It's going to say content and then type. Now the content type in this case is going to be just some dumb text. So we're going to say text / and plain. And of course, this is going to change. If we are sending HTML, we need to change it. And if we say JSON, we need to change it as well. But the first thing that we need to do is to set the headers. Good. Now, this one is going to start, it's going to listen, and then we send header. So the next thing that we need to do, we need to close the connection and send some actual text. So inside, after the header, we're going to use this response, and we have a method that's going to be called end. So the main job of end is going to be closing, just finishing this function, this instance, and sending whatever it is that we want to send. In this case, we're going to be sending some text. So inside, we're going to send the text. It's going to be, hello, dude, I am a response. So again, the main job of this one is it's just sending the response and closing the instance, just saying, I'm done with this. Send the response, this is done, right? Okay. Now, whenever you make a request for something, for example, with the create React app, whenever we create that and we start the development server, you get a location, which is going to be localhost and then the port number. In the case of create React app, the default port is 3000. Now with this is the same thing. We are creating a server and we need to specify where is it going to be. So in this case, the create server has a listen. It's going to be an event. So this listen, we need to specify, we need to pass to this listen, where is it going to be? So the first argument that it's going to be receiving is going to be the port. In this case, I'm just going to use 8181. Of course, you can use whatever port you want. And if it's not working, it's because your computer is already using that port. So you're going to need to change the port. The second part is going to be the actual location. So in this case, since we are working in our computer and we are just developing, you need to pass the local host. Now you're going to need an actual number, not just local host. So you're going to say 127.0.0.1. This address is going to be your computer, right? Okay. So now I'm going to close this and I'm going to save it. And we are ready to test this out. This is all the code we need to do for now, just to send a dumb text. So I'm going to go to the path right here, and we're going to start this file. Remember that to start the file with Node, we need to say Node first, and then the name of the file, which is going to run it. I'm going to press enter, and notice, don't freak out, that you're going to have this. So it's kind of frozen. So this is correct. This server, this instance, it's awaiting for something to happen. Created the server, and now the server, it's awaiting for connections. So if we go to the browser and we type localhost, just like this, localhost, and then the port number, which is going to be 8181, we know that the server, it's awaiting for requests. So if we press enter, we get, hello, dude, I am a response. So this is working, right? Really, really cool. And this was really simple. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. It's real simple to create a server with Node.js. Of course, the complex thing is going to be what you're going to be doing in between. But everything else, just creating a server, is really, really easy. So you're going to see in the web some examples in how to create a server, maybe in a different way. Most of people, what they do, they create a variable to host this HTTP. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to say const and then server, just like this, and then equal to something. Now this variable, this const, is going to be equal to this. So then what they do, they split this into and they call the server, use that variable where they host the create server, and then they use the listen in a different place. So we are just splitting this. And then most of the times they get a console log, something like this, console log, and then server is running on port 8181, whatever. So I'm going to save it. Oh, we need to run it, of course. I'm going to need to know, I'm going to end the connection, then node, and then server.js. Now, and we get the console log. Server is running on port 8181, and if we reload the page, is it still working? Now notice that we are just executing the server.js this way. If you use nodemon, just like we used before, there's no need for you to start it again. It's just gonna reset the server, restart the server every time you make a change. Okay, so let's be real. If you want to create a server, you're not just gonna send some dumb text. You're gonna be sending some actual data right now. Okay, so let's see how to send some HTML and not just some dumb text. So first is going to be the header, right? You're going to need to send something else. So on the content type, we're going to say text and then HTML. Now to send it, it's going to be real easy. There's kind of two ways. You can do it right here inside the and. We could use some template strings, going to make some space. And then of course we send the actual HTML response. First, of course, we're going to have an HTML. Then I'm going to say body, makes sense. And inside I'm going to have just an h1 tag with some styling. Maybe it's going to say hello, hello there. And I'm going to add some styling. So I'm going to say style. It's going to be equal to background of red, whatever, doesn't matter. So on the end, whenever we close the connection, we are just sending an HTML response. Now, since the headers are going to be HTML, it's going to still be working. So if I go right here, I'm going to kill the server and then start it again. You need to do that. Everything goes okay. And if I reload the page, we get some HTML content. You have a different method for this. Instead of using and, what you could use is going to be write. So it's going to be res.write, open and close. And inside here, you're going to be passing your template strings. Let me make this a little bit better. I'm going to save it, kill the server, and start it again. And if we reload the page, that is still working. That's good. So again, let's be honest. Most likely, you're not just going to send your HTML right here. You're going to be loading a file, and you're going to be sending some HTML file from your index.html. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to go right here and create a file called index.html, right? Okay. So this one is going to contain whatever we have inside here. So I'm just going to copy and paste. Then I'm going to go back to server. And now what we need to do, we kind of need to include this index.html inside of here. So we can know, the application can know where to find this index.html. Now, again, since we are going to be loading files and reading files, we need to include the module fs, file system. So we're going to say const fs, and it's going to be equal to require open and close, and then we pass fs, just like we did before. Now we're going to need to load this file. So I'm going to say I'm going to create a variable called HTML, and this one is going to be using the fs, the file system module, and we're going to be reading a file. So we're going to say read and then file sync, just like this. We need to pass the location, so it's going to be inside // and then in index.html. Now the locations of your files might be changing, and sometimes you're going to need to use something called dir name, right? But we're gonna talk about this later. But for now, this one is going to recognize the file and just bring it, right? Okay. So I'm gonna close it, and I'm gonna be deleting this. We don't need it anymore. So now we have the file, the HTML file inside our application. So I'm just gonna be passing HTML, and this should be working. So I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna kill the server, do clear, and then run the server again. Okay, so we get server is running, and if I reload the page, we get the same result. So everything works. Now again, maybe you don't want to send an HTML response and you want to send some JSON data, just like an API. And we're going to be using, of course, Node, the server part of Node, to create our own API. So let's see how to output some JSON instead of HTML. Okay, let's see how to send a JSON response, just like an API. And right here, there are we have two terms we need to talk about. What is an API and what is an endpoint? So an API stands for Application Programming Interface. So an API is something that provides tools we can use to build our own software or to work with our own software. Could be any tool. You might be thinking, yeah, dude, we know that. Well, yeah, that's fine. I'm just telling you because a lot of people think that an API is something that returns JSON. And if you're talking about a web API, well, yeah, most of cases, yeah. But these tools are available through HTTP, and know that an API is not just that, all right? Just for you to know. And then we have the other one, or other word, which is going to be endpoint. For example, whenever you send some data to a URL where the API is going to grab the data and do something, that URL where the API is located is going to be called endpoint. So, okay, I'm just telling you this because if you didn't know, yeah, now you know. So how do we send some JSON? So first we need to change the content type. It's not going to be text HTML anymore. Now it's going to be application, and I'm going to be typing this application word a lot. Application / and then JSON. Right. Okay, that's good. So now we kind of need to at least have a JSON. We need to create a JSON or an object actually. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an object. I'm going to say const, and I'm going to say use JSON. Let's say JSON, and it's going to be equal to an object. Of course, inside your application, whenever you have this, you're going to have objects, not real JSON. You can send them to real JSON and close everything with double quotes and create your JSON, doesn't matter. But for now, I'm just going to create an object. So this object is going to contain name, and for the name, I'm going to say Francis, comma, and for the second one, I'm going to say cars, and for cars, we're going to have an array, which is going to be Ford, and it's going to be, I don't know, Nissan, whatever. So right now we have a JSON, a variable. Good. Let me make this a little bit better. There we go. Sorry for that. So now what we need to do, we need to send the JSON response, right? We have our data right here. We just need to send it. Okay. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it inside the end. Right. This should be working just like the other ones. I'm going to press Ctrl C. I'm going to do clear, and then I'm going to run the application again. And we know we get it. That's good. Now, if I reload the page, we are going to get nothing because we are not really sending some JSON. We are sending an object, and an object, it's not JSON. So we kind of need to convert this to text, because if you think about it, JSON is just text with a different format, of course. So what we can do, we can use toString to convert everything to string. So I'm going to say toString. I'm going to use that JavaScript method. I'm going to convert everything and then just send it. Okay, I'm going to save the application, Control C, run the server again. You could run nodemon, no problem. So we're going to get that object. And again, we are doing to string. We are just converting the object to string. So this will not convert this to JSON. So what we can do, we can use a method we have available with JavaScript, which is going to be JSON stringify. I'm going to say JSON, just like this, dot, and stringify. And inside, this is going to be a method just like this. And what we do, we pass the object we want to convert to JSON. And that's it. That's really it. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to go kill the server, start it again, and reload the page. So if we reload the page, we get some JSON data back. So now if your application is going to be making requests to this endpoint, to localhost 8181, and you request for this object, your application is going to get the JSON back. So of course, in the next few lectures, we're going to be just changing all this logic, and we're going to be sending data and sending JSON data just like an API in the pro way. We are just learning how to do it in the most basic way. Okay, that's fine. Now let's go to the next section. We're gonna learn how to use routes.